Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Those were the words above the gates of hell, Dante's Inferno. My favorite person to quote when talking about fraud. So today's episode is all about how to recognize fraud and lessons in trust. And I want to talk a little bit about Dante's Satan, who I think had like 3 brains and mouths and was a very intelligent person. But the people in Dante's hell lived with desire without hope. They still had bodily, biological desires, but they'd given up all hope of the future. And a distinguishing difference between the people in hell and the people in purgatory after hell was that the villains in hell had given up all hope and were just stuck in the same negative patterns over and over again. Now, one of the techniques that I've used in the past to identify a fraud, and I've come across far too many in my lifetime, is I try to get to the bottom of it. I try to get to the heart of the person's philosophy in life. And when eventually I hit that bottom, what I usually get is, the whole world's a Ponzi scheme. Fuck it. The whole thing's just a waste of time, Chris. No one will ever change. They've got this despair, this inner just despair. And like they've just given up on humanity. And so it's okay. It gives them a license to start going around and screwing people over. And right now, I don't feel like honest people are being rewarded. Right now, if you're in the business of fraud, like, you're doing really, really well. But if you're a good, hard-working person and you're bringing lots of skills and crafts to this planet and you're listening to other people's needs and values, I just don't feel like you're getting heard right now. So this episode is dedicated to those people, the honest people that do know how to work. So this show is about a few things, really. It's not just about fraud itself, it's also about how to recognize honest people who just don't know how to market themselves. We'll talk about BitNation at the end. So joining us, we do have David Gilson, who formerly at Coindesk.
Hi there. Yep, good to be here, and thanks for asking me on.
Cool. And we have the machine, that is Jamie Nelson.
The machine, yes, I wrapped up my Hong Kong broadcast and made it over to Chris before coffee so I could give some input on this because I scams.
Yeah, you've been really like ruthless with the videos recently. We have Ksenia joining us from Sweden.
Hello, yeah. I'm Ksenia and I'm in Sweden.
Yay. We have Will Pangman, but I'm not sure if you're there, Will. Thanks so much for joining us, by the way.
Hey guys, glad to be here.
Cool, thanks for joining us. And of course, everyone's favorite topic, Theo Goodman.
Hey, what's up?
Going to be in your element today.
Is life a pump and dump or not?
Life is a pump and dump, apparently.
That's one of my favorite quotes. That was a really funny quote when it happened.
Right, let's get straight to business then. So all the links and everything are in the description below. This is the article we're going to discuss today from this website. I won't call it a magazine, Coindesk. And it was an article written by Daniel Harrison, who is, they're not actually, they're contributors, aren't they, at Coindesk? No one actually works there as such. You've got a skeleton crew of people, and then they syndicate articles. And back on the 6th of October, he wrote this piece, which was all about the price of Bitcoin bouncing off of the outfit's $300 bottom and how it was going to go up. And in the original version of the article, not this one, he showcased a particular over-the-counter trader, OTC for short, who was going by the name of @BTC Market Maker on Twitter and was advertising very, very favorable terms of 8% above spot price. And it appears as though Daniel has done an interview with @BTC Market Maker in Coindesk, and this has given him a lot of credibility. He's even quoted him and talked about, you know, how OTC actually works and so on. Now, the thing is that a lot of people in the comments were suggesting that this guy was not legit. And actually, a lot of people were just saying, look, this guy doesn't look right. I'm not sure what it is, but it's not cool at all. And then Hugh who hangs out at the London meetups, actually raised the warning sign and said, look, this guy really does look dodgy. And he actually said, look, if you've caused anyone to deal with this broker by advertising him here, you should cover any losses that ensue. Please put a warning up on this page. Now, not long after I spotted that, I started going through a lot of the evidence, and I did some digging, and someone reached out to me on BitMessage anonymously to tell me, you know, that this guy was definitely a scammer, and actually gave me proof that he was a scammer by showing that he was using a picture of a former Icelandic disgraced banker, and that there was other sort of very, very suspicious looking things going on his account, and that essentially he formed part of a network of suspected shills. Now, I'm just going to go through those right now. Now, I'm not saying these are categorically shills, but I'm saying that he was claiming, and he has sent me this list as well as other people, of people who he believes are just dummy accounts. They're often called sock puppet accounts. Because
did you see this guy's account with the cigar? Go back to that one. That one's great.
And he's saying that this is a network of the same people or the same person that operates them. And then what they do is they retweet each other. Now, I apologize if I've got this wrong. I've just been sent this list of people, and I've done a little bit of digging. And yeah, sometimes it often does look very, very suspicious. They seem to be praising each other an awful lot, and it just doesn't look like it's legit at all. So this is how things. So his page has now been taken down. I was then contacted by someone called Aaron, and Aaron told me that he had been scammed out of 40 bitcoins by this Vollmer character because he had seen the Coindesk article. That was what he said, and he asked me what he should do. Now, he was saying he was going to go and meet this BTC market maker, Heinrich Vollmer, in London, and I said, well, I don't know that it's a good idea, but you could try it. I doubt he's even in the country. He did try it. Obviously, Vollmer didn't show up. Now, we then started an investigation. I've been time-stamping the investigation as I've been going through. I've also been archiving all of the evidence on archive.org. I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. But this is essentially what we found. What we found was that Daniel Harrison, the author of the piece, several days before the article was even written, about 5-6 days before, was joking around with Theo on the broadcast with us now, saying that, ha ha ha, Heinrich is an escrow, and seems to be showing a very cavalier attitude to the whole business. Escrow is a very, very important feature of an over-the-counter trade, because if you don't know the other party, what's to stop them from walking off with your bitcoins? You need something, or a mechanism between you to protect you in the case of fraud, right? He also seemed to show on the 1st of October, that's 6 days before the article ran, was saying to BTC market maker, FYI, I did not receive the wire you forwarded. Was it to, and then his email addresses. And I actually archived that here. You can see I've notified him and Emily, who's the managing editor at Coindesk, that, look, you know, if you already knew 6 days before that this guy wasn't legit, why did you run with the article? And then John Law, formerly at Coindesk, after the article is written, says, look, guys, you know, there's some skepticism over this guy in the comments, and directs him to it. And Daniel does, to his credit, post a reply, but all his reply is basically that it's a, you know, it's a jungle out there. Just be careful. And he doesn't really go on to qualify it. So this is the guy's account. It's obviously been shut down now because these accounts often, you know, have a rotating door, but this is what it looks like. And often what these people do is they will just pull images off of the internet and create new personalities with old legitimate looking material, and then they'll just have a bot that runs and just tweets out offering very, very favorable you know, incentives. Now, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. And the way they usually ensnare their victims is by climbing through a vulnerability, a weakness in that person's, you know, they prey on your hopes in many ways. And so, yes, of course, there are some contributions. We're not saying that Aaron didn't make any mistakes. Of course, he did make mistakes, and he's painfully aware of those mistakes. But let's face it, these can happen to anyone. So also, just one other thing as well before I break out to the rest of the group. He doesn't even know what this is Daniel Harrison, doesn't even know what the Bitcoin Web of Trust is, right? John Law had to tell him that. And I just kind of pointed out that like a Coindesk contributor doesn't know what Bitcoin's Web of Trust is. Why the hell is this guy writing on Bitcoin matters without doing his research? The Web of Trust was like a massive, massive part of Bitcoin. All right, that's enough from me. Guys, take over. What do you all think? Maybe Theo, because you had so many dealings with this guy. You start.
Well, I didn't. Well, actually, I was dealing more with Harrison, who wrote the CoinDesk article, because he does have some interesting things to say about the market, and it is true. There is a high demand in the over-the-counter market. That without a doubt. It's just a problem when he does exactly what you said. So, you know, he was claiming that people were getting $500 and $560 a Bitcoin in over-the-counter prices, which might be true. And then a few days later comes the article that you posted, and he has Heinrich in there with him. And as you pointed out, I asked, are these people sending him Bitcoin without escrow, with him in the conversation? With Harrison and BTC market maker in the conversation. And Harrison replied that, Heinrich is an escrow. So he's basically trying to say BTC market maker is a big broker who is broking for people that want to buy blocks of 10, 20, and 50 Bitcoins off market, and you should trust him. That's what it alluded to. He didn't say you should trust him, but that's what it alluded to, because it's trying to say that he is an escrow for someone, behind him, and that's to me a little worrisome. And everyone should know Bitcoin is not reversible. So if you send first, then you're not going to be able to get it back. And we have technology to help us with this issue. I mean, first of all, there's local Bitcoins. Everybody knows it, but they have an escrow system, and it works fine for local trades, not over the internet. I don't recommend over-the-counter over the internet like this guy at, but for a local trade and a person you don't know, and not tens of thousands of dollars or a whole lot of money, but a few hundred, it works quite fine. You need a telephone. You could get, if you want to be anonymous, you could, you have to figure out how to, get an anonymous telephone and all that kind of stuff. But it works with an SMS, and all the buyer needs to see, all the buyer needs to see is a 4-digit number, and he knows the Bitcoins have been sent to his local Bitcoin account wallet, irreversible. Okay, so this doesn't even require a computer. It's quite simple. I encourage you just to go to localbitcoins.com and just check it out. They have a real easy how to use it system. Okay, so, and there's also other things that it is in beta, like BitHalo, or other things that is a kind of escrow system that you could use right now that will prevent fraud like this from happening. And people need to explore that if you really want to. If you don't want to use an exchange and you want to do business online like this and you want to avoid it. But I mean, it comes down to this. If something is too good to be true, it probably is. It's such an old thing, and people forget it, and I don't understand why. You can go on localbitcoins.com and you might even find an offer around what Heinrich was offering in your local area. So people, if you really want to do over-the-counter and you think that you're going to make a lot of money, test it out with small amounts in your local area. Don't send some person that you know on the internet 10 Bitcoins. It's ridiculous. Okay, so, come on. Use your brain and, try it out locally first. Bitcoin was developed for peer-to-peer usage, and we should use it like that. But use caution. Use your brain.
No, agreed, absolutely. But David, I want to get your perspective on this as a journalist and a former Coindesk contributor yourself. One of the first rules of journalism is obligation to truth, fact-checking and verification. No?
Yes. I'm just looking through Harrison's story. I'm trying, doing my best to look at this with a balanced point of view, because I've been in that guy's position before, and yes, as a journalist, your first obligation is to be truth. However, none of us are perfect, and we do make mistakes. On the other hand, I'm looking for a story, and what I would have liked to have seen was him at least saying that he had tried to speak to one of Vollmer's customers, because that would have been the double source. Vollmer would have been the first source, however, whatever his veracity is, and then a recipient would have been a secondary source. Had I tried to do that, I would have said I reached out, because the thing is, when you ask people for quotes, you have a deadline for a story, and people might not get back to you in time. But at that point, you say, well, I reached out to people and no one got back to me at the time of publication. We'll update the story as and when. And I think another issue that this raises in terms of journalism and how we cover news in online, the web is a very ephemeral medium. And what happens, and this isn't just true to online media, it's press and television as well, there is no long tail in it. There's no long tail follow-up, so you often don't get to see how the story really ends. Coindesk have updated the story and said that they have removed references to a certain trader pending further investigation. I mean, to be fair, that was only 11 days ago. So there's still time to do something, but if I was a betting man, I would say there will probably be no more mention of him.
This is the thing, because we're doing the investigation in Git. So we're putting the evidence into a folder, and then I'm doing Git commits, and then I'm timestamping those commitments into the blockchain and individual. So we interviewed Aaron. And I timestamped the interview with the Merkle root and obviously the eventual block that it got stamped into, proving that it existed at that time and no other. And I'm trying the best I can. I'm having problems with Git at the moment just because GitHub itself doesn't allow for large files, so I needed to find a solution for that. And this was taking me, like, no sooner had I put the word out about this guy, I was getting 2 people anonymously contacting me, one through BitMessage and another through Twitter, through DM. And they had plenty of evidence. They had plenty of stuff to tell me. Have you seen this account? This guy's already raised the alarm bells over here on this forum. Like, this is proper community policing, or this is like a neighborhood watch for the internet, no?
Yeah, and if this Vollmer person was legit and for real, it would seem that the sensible thing for him to do would have been to not remove his Twitter account and actually stay out there and try and defend his name. Whereas it looks like, and this is an opinion, this is not fact, it looks like he's got the money and run from whoever fell for the alleged scam. But it does not look good. I mean, if you are if he is legit, he hasn't gone to bet. He's certainly done a good job of making himself look otherwise.
Yeah, and actually we should just say at this point, there is obviously a possibility that Aaron has just sent the money to himself. There's nothing to disprove that he doesn't have the private key to the address where the 40 bitcoins were sent, and that he could be, in theory, scamming Coindesk now, right? And actually,
yes,
maybe he gets good. Now that's possible. That's why I wanted to meet him face to face. We had Hugh there with us. We had Toma there with us. We had Ismail turned up as well. A few people from the London Bitcoin scene turned up. This guy my heart, as soon as I looked at him, I was like, oh, I'm so sorry this has happened to you. Like, I could tell he wasn't a scammer, right? Like, he's studying architecture, I believe, or he's an architect. But he looked very young, and I just like, I have spidey senses when it comes to frauds and scammers, and to me, he doesn't look like one of those. So yeah, I do believe him personally. Of course, I'll leave it up to everyone else. I have written to Emily. I've written to her several times, at least twice I think now. Once to tell her about the article and the fact that it needs to be taken down, and second was today when Aaron emailed her and CC'd me in. I've timestamped it saying that she should come on air. I've also reached out to Daniel Harrison on Twitter several times, giving him my email, telling him to converse with me, send him what we have. I have received just one tweet back from him clarifying a point that he made earlier on. That was it. So this ongoing investigation, let's not let this go, right? Because the problem is that these Twitter accounts, as far as the scammers are concerned, have a monetary value attached. They have opportunity costs. Okay, so let's say you can buy on the sort of grey market for social media accounts and likes and retweets and things. You can buy about 1,000 Twitter accounts for no less than $100, right? And they can look legitimate. They've all been matured, which means that the bot has let them be maybe a year old. And let's say you want teenage girls. Let's say you want to go into scam this particular market, right? You can buy accounts off the shelf that have pictures of teenage girls taken from other areas of the internet, like on Facebook or something. They use techniques to obscure it from its origins, and then they will literally just copy paste content to make it look as though it's a legitimate person. And because they've got a network of these, the network just links to itself. So they seem to be having conversations between each other, and then they use that as a way through the door. Now, these sock puppet accounts, so-called sock puppet accounts, are disposable, and as soon as they get found out, they just ditch them and move on, ditch them and move on. So all Vollmer really wanted was 10 Bitcoins. That's why that was the minimum. And it was just a case of stretching out the identity, the social media identity they had set up, stretching it out for as long as he could. And as soon as he got a 10 Bitcoin account, that was it. Let it go. And maybe the reason why, because we wondered also why he would keep the account alive for another 2 days, even after Aaron had raised the alarm. He seemed to carry on for like 3 or 4 days, and we wonder whether or not he was still in negotiation with someone else and was hoping that that one came through. And of course, when he realized it wasn't going to come through, he just, well, that's it, and then he moves on. But they're still out there, and he's still got other accounts, and I'm hoping that his downfall will be his greed.
Yeah, and I'm trying to put myself into Harrison's place, because more than once I talked to people who seemed legit and wrote a story, and that did not turn out to be the case. And I think this is it's an unfortunate thing about commercial pressures versus the idealism of journalism, because to make a successful media outlet on the internet, it's all about SEO, it's all about getting revenue in. And to do that, you've got to be first with stories. You've got to bam, 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 bam. Let's get all the stuff out as quick as we can. It's conveyor belt churning it all out. And that puts pressure on doing quality research. And also, it means that the attention also always stays on the new thing, on the news, the plural of new. And not to the old, not to the long tail of stories. And this is a systemic problem, not just the Bitcoin world, the tech world, the entertainment world, and so on.
That's a good point. I don't think a lot of people even know that that's the plural of new. So, did you have a point to make?
Yeah, I've been just thinking about a couple of things. Basically, I don't think that's a problem of scammers. It's sort of a problem of media, if you like. If, for instance, something like Coindesk, which looks quite legitimate, would have a disclaimer saying that we actually have contributors, it made me think of peer-reviewed journals. It's like, I mean, in science, it's just a huge tradition, right? And still, sometimes, you know this science paper generator? Right, so it's still, there is some weird shit going through this system of verification. Like, I think it's like based on citation and stuff. So it's almost like a problem you can't really solve entirely. And it's always things like we discussed physical networks of trust, like Chris went and saw this guy who is like really devastated, and it's like emotional thing. Then there are I don't know, well, disclaimers on the page itself, some sort of tutorials about scam. Well, there is even like, for instance, how do they deal with web shops? They just review them online. So before you buy something online, you just go and check, are they scam or not? And then another technique that like Bitcoin Talk uses, for instance, as soon as there is like new currency out, they go through this scam what is called rite of passage. So it sort of goes in a, so before someone becomes legitimate, he goes through this circles of hell of like being scam. That's quite interesting as well. So that was I was thinking of. What are the techniques to like sort of combinations of techniques and to deal with this? Because I mean, I'm gonna stop talking now. I talk quite a lot. But I say the last thing is like, unfortunately, like I would disagree with Theo. People won't use their brains because I mean, remember, people believe in God and things like that, you know.
Controversial.
And
You're saying God doesn't exist.
I'm not sure.
Live on the World Crypto Network. Are we announcing that? Are we breaking that story? God doesn't exist, everyone.
Well, I'm not sure. Maybe I'm being politically incorrect, but I am politically incorrect.
I'm just hoping people will use their brain more often, you know.
Some
I don't
people
want to.
don't
And I don't want to talk down to anyone that fell for a scam. You know, everyone's fallen for some kind of scam in their life. You know what I mean? That's how you. But you know, come on, Bitcoin is not reversible. Don't send people coins that you don't know. Not so complicated. You know what I mean? I mean, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. This is the basic mantra you need to get in your head. We have something
That's
called
why I
local...
say to you guys, that's why everyone needs to give me some Bitcoin and I'll save the world.
Yeah, sure. But you know, but you're right. Unfortunately, you know, people are going to want to, you know, say, I want to get some easy money. I want to get, you know, 8% over market, instant wire to my account. That sounds great. Let's do it, you know. And, you know, that's just avoid the honeypot, you know. I mean, come on. You can do this locally if you really want to sell Bitcoin for cash. You don't have to use some shady Twitter account or whatever.
And that's
you know,
why we need to talk about contribution rather than blame here. So it's all about contribution. And what does it say about us as an industry if we're doing write-ups on scammers? Like, what's our contribution as journalists? And now the journalists verifying the journalists, right? Because we now have to do to Coindesk what Coindesk should have been doing all along. And this isn't the first time, and I don't want to prejudice the discussion, but this is not the first time Coindesk has had allegations like this. They are regularly being accused of chopping and changing articles and then not telling anyone that they've changed them, and then comments being locked and some people's comments being censored and things like this. So this isn't the first time, and it needs to be brought up. Like, it seriously needs to bring up, because the scammers don't need help, right?
And it's not exclusive to Coindesk either, and it's not exclusive to Bitcoin or technology. This happens in all news media with the bias and the concision. I mean, it's very similar to what we saw with the concision piece of BBC, and how it's targeted to drive the reader or the viewer's opinion towards what to sway them into believing one way or another of what the writer or the writers or the publication is trying to get them to believe.
Yeah, guys, I mean, this is one of the things with media, you know, media's forever, you know, getting the wrong take on things, and the kind of intersection with, you know, scamming and stuff. I think, you know, if you go and speak to any of the anonymous hackers or any of those guys, they mention ops security. You know, people have got to be savvy and in control of their own security these days.
Yeah,
Particularly
definitely.
with Bitcoin putting that back onto the individual. You know, if you want to be your own bank and take responsibility, you've got to be savvy enough not to get, you know, rinsed.
Exactly, and that goes back to, so this is a nice picture that I made in my favorite program, Paint, and see, this is you right here in the middle, And then this is the technique marketers use, but scammers use it too. It's a real simple one. So if you just get the message from one YouTube video that this business is okay, that's not enough. You got to be bombarded. You got to get the message from Twitter. You got to get a direct message. Add a little beer over here into the mix, and maybe Facebook, and another message, another source coming here, and another source, and another source, and then that's how. And then suddenly the person seems legit. You got all these media sources on the internet bombarding you with this person is an okay company, and because of the sock puppet accounts, that's the use of them, and then if all you need to do is get one trust link from Coindesk or from another media source, and then it's bank time, you're going to be able to scam the people.
Yeah, it's funny, you're actually describing like a fake network of trust, so because people don't
yeah, that's what I mean. Exactly, but we have to use due diligence, because anybody can set up those accounts like I just showed. You know what I mean?
I have 5 accounts and I retweet myself.
Yeah, I know, but if it's still, even if I have all of these things, if it's too good to be true, then Vollmer Heinrich had all of that stuff. He had social media accounts with followers. He didn't have a YouTube video. He had references on a legitimate website, and he had okay, and that was for some people enough. And I just mean that you have to be. I don't know if that was a web of trust what I showed or not, but we need we need to put ourselves also in the shoes of the scammer, and that's the technique they're going to use. They know if it's just one message, that's not gonna work out,
Yeah, but it just looks like a web of trust. It's a bit like you accept someone's friendship on Facebook because you see this person as a friend with 5 of your friends, in a sense.
Exactly.
It sort of gives you the same feeling. It's just sort of imprinted in our brains since, I don't know, maybe we lived in caves and stuff. That's how we knew.
I think a possible weapon is, I'm just thinking about certain TV shows, journalistic shows I've seen in the UK in the 80s. There was the Cook Report, and in the 90s and noughties there was BBC Rogue Traders, where a journalist would investigate a malicious trader and actually create a honeypot, catch them on camera, and basically expose them on live television. Taking this into the social media realm, in the example of Vollmer, people were finding him through Twitter. So the only way people would probably see a message against him saying, hey, hang on, this isn't legit, is if someone tweeted links attached to his tweets, i.e. replies. Again, that takes time, and also I hate the saying, but time is money, and that work needs to be funded somehow, and which comes back to the whole thing, which is where I think went wrong on Coindesk and why the story had to be amended, was that there are commercial pressures to get things out as quick as you can, and I don't know where the money's going to come from, because the people you want to protect probably don't realize they need protecting.
But I don't think that's what people are driven by. I think what I've noticed in terms of the schisms within the community, I said before we came on air that when I went to the Bitcoin meetup yesterday for the BitNation thing, the first thing I heard as I walked through the door was, what price do you think Bitcoin is going to be next week? And people, all they were talking about was comparisons on trading techniques. How do you do it? Well, I buy on the way down, and when everyone's selling, that's when I buy, and I made 10 times my investment and all that. It's like, it's not that you're not clever, sir. It's just that I don't want to hear about it, because you're not really adding that much to, like, you have the freedom to do what you want. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying that you're not really adding a whole lot here. You're not bringing much to the table. And what I'm noticing is that this sort of need to satisfy these biological needs, these sort of desires, at the expense of other things that are much more important, like honesty and integrity and truth and just hard work. And then what happens is these are the people that get rewarded at the expense of the people putting in the work. And actually, why don't we take this opportunity, because I'm so bad at like asking for money and doing promotions and stuff. Where is it? Oh yeah. Is that it? Yes. So we have the first donation address. You should donate to, who is this actually? Is this you, David? Yeah, it's David Gilson. That's David Gilson's address. So if you like his chat, you should definitely donate to this address. It's also in the description below. And who's this one? This one is Jamie Nelson's, who's been like an absolute machine. He's been online like 24/7, and I haven't.
He's been up like 38 hours consecutively.
Please,
what a guy!
Get him some more money, because this isn't enough in his account right now. Please do that. Okay, it's in the description.
That's my World Crypto Network career earnings.
Yeah, you should get a vanity address. I keep seeing this at the end. I think
suck my.
Yeah, I was like, what is that? And we have Theo Goodman's address here. Plus, I don't actually have other people's addresses because I didn't know who was going to come on air, but I'll update those after the show. So please donate to us, because we need to eat and stuff. And my donation address is in the bottom, but I'm terrible at asking for money. And actually, I also want to thank Magnus and James and Paul, because thank you for sending in your donations. I bought this gizmo, which I used yesterday at the meetup, and it's
very good.
Mic. Yeah, it's a Zoom mic, and it's got XLRs in it, and it's a little miniature mixing desk. And actually, I was speaking to Toma, who may be a new addition to the network. He's like a professional documentary maker, award-winning documentary maker, and he supplied these really nice lavalier mics and stuff like that. We're going to be doing another one at the University College London on Thursday with I forget her first name, but it's she's Dr. Micklejohn. She does Bitcoin anonymity paper that she's written. She's going to be talking about that, so we're going to try and live stream that as well. It does cost about a week's worth of travel in London, costs about 2 weeks worth of food, and I live on around 1,000 calories a day, which is about 1,200 calories less than what I should do, really. But I don't mind, because actually I hate eating anyway. It takes too much time. It's expensive.
Fucking hell, Chris.
But so I'm quite skinny anyway. But just bear in mind that every time I do these live streams, that's automatically £20. So all I need is like 20 quid, and that's break even. And then any more that I get over 20 quid, that will pay for my food as well. So that would be
guys, I haven't got a chance to get acquainted to some of you. Obviously, Jamie, we know each other pretty well, and Theo. Chris, I've bumped into you a few times across online. Can we just have a quick run through and quickly who people are? What your expertise is?
Well,
Maybe.
I guess so. Will Pangman, come on, dude, you haven't said anything the whole time. Introduce yourself. What are you good at, Will?
Yeah.
What are your skills?
I'm good at long-winded commenting. I'm working on that, so that's why you guys have heard a little less of me lately.
We're all good at that.
Yeah. Nice to meet you all who I haven't met yet, and glad you're here, David. I didn't know you were formerly at Coindesk, but I'm glad you're here contributing to the WCN. And Shem, and how is your name pronounced? Ksenia?
Ksenia.
Ksenia, right. That's a beautiful name. Well, it's nice to meet everybody. Yeah, I think this is this could be a series, how to detect fraud, and how to basically just teach people to use the tools that exist that allow for them to prevent being defrauded. Some of them were talked about. Local Bitcoins is a great resource, but even that's not perfect. There's other little social engineering tricks that you can teach yourself or learn from others that will allow you to probe a potential fraudster, huckster, and detect them on your own. So we can talk about that, but I want to turn the floor back over to the other correspondents here. I just think this is a hugely valuable lesson for people to learn. Doesn't appear that Coindesk has learned the lesson, or they're trying to sweep their mistake under the rug. It seems somewhat.
Sorry, guys. I only come in half. Just quickly summarize. What's Coindesk done? That's a security breach or whatever.
They ran an article on an over-the-counter trader going by the name of Heinrich.
OTC. Yeah, Heinrich. Yeah, Dr. Heinrich. Let me guess, the Twitter guy.
Yep.
He's not real.
Of course, he's not real. It was a picture.
Yeah, man. What the hell, man? You just said first name. I fucking know it's not real. I saw his. Go on, carry on.
No, you're right. Your reaction is perfect because that's exactly what most of us more experienced people thought at the time. Lost my Windows because ADHD.
Well, personally, I thought he was a doctor, so I must trust him.
Yeah, he's a
Well,
doctor.
here's one thing. Here's one dead giveaway. If anyone is trying to seek a dark pool transaction or over-the-counter Bitcoin transaction, especially large sums like he was advertising, saying, you know, high sums of money and things like that he would trade, and high premiums that he would buy at and things like that, that should be a dead giveaway. If he's looking to sell Bitcoins, that should tell you that maybe it's a less likelihood that they might be a fraudster, because you can make sure that you've received payment before you release the Bitcoins more easily than you can accept fiat payments for Bitcoin. So there are a couple of ways you can detect this. Anyone who's doing over-the-counter transactions is using BitcoinTalk.org or Skype chat rooms that are largely private, where these trades are done, and they're reputable names in the space who you've heard of before. They may be agents of Coinbase or BitPay who regularly sell and buy in dark pools. They may be other people that you've heard of their name in the space before, successful entrepreneurs who maybe aren't actively working on a business at the moment, but they're busy trading Bitcoins and making deals. And they do this with another very arcane tool that we've had for millennia, the contract. So that's another tool. I know most people, we've outsourced this responsibility to lawyers for so long that most people don't know how to do it. It's not something you learn in college anymore or high school like you used to 50, 60 years ago. But you can learn this online for free, and you can practice it with some small transactions. And if people look at you weird, like, why are we doing a contract? People have become averse to contracts. There are basic contracts that aren't gotcha contracts that you can do that are very
protects two people, isn't it? I think it's actually quite good business sense if people, you know, do contracts. It's like a kind of honesty. It's like saying, look, if we do this, this is our obligation. But jumping back to that Dr. Heinrich or whatever his name is, and the kind of OTC trades. Me and Jamie were speaking about this yesterday. I think they're taking more and more share of kind of off the books trading, as to say. And I saw that doctor guy, whatever his name is. I looked at his profile. I just thought, yeah, man, this guy's not for real, man. But one thing that I think that this should all underscore to everyone in the community, and obviously everyone I think at the table here, as kind of aware of this. But this kind of one has to have a kind of an intelligence, and kind of if a guy walks up to you in the street and says, "Hey, do you want to come back to my house?" You're not going to say, "Yeah, are you?" Unless you're into that sort of thing.
Look at my puppies and stuff.
Yeah, come and look at my puppies. But this is the point. We're living in an age of where social engineering, hacking, these sort of things are even more prevalent, and one has to be intelligent. I mean, Jamie, you're a network security guy. What do you think about this kind of thing?
What happens is, this used to be an old scam with cash, too. A guy'd come up to you downtown Chicago, down on Halstead Street, with a $100 bill and say, "Hey, I got this $100 bill. I need to break it because they won't take anything larger than a 20. Can you break a $100 bill for me?" And guys would be like, "Oh, yeah, I see this guy has a $100 bill right there." And they would get the 520s from you or whatever, and then they'd run off with their $100 bill and your 520s, and you'd be standing there going, where'd he go? And he vanished. So it's an old trick.
Even in public, this stuff happens, and like Jamie's pointing out, one good example of that. That's another thing folks should be suspect of. If anyone's coming up to you asking for change for large bills, have a longer conversation with them than 5 minutes, and see if they're in a hurry, they're gonna go to somebody else and try and get them, and you just avoided getting got. So this is a great way to distribute counterfeit money, and not, like, if you're the counterfeiter, to not be spending the counterfeit money. You go and you exchange your counterfeit bills with some private person on the street in a nightclub where it's dark or something like that, and they don't know that what they're exchanging for is fake, and they give you the, potentially less fake fiat money, and off you go, and you can spend your counterfeit money that way. So if you're making change for someone, it could be counterfeit money. You should carry a counterfeit bill detection pen if you're going to be handling cash. Everyone should just carry one of these. Most of us carry backpacks and small bags and things. Just buy a pack of those, throw one in there, and have it. And anytime, and pull it out. If you see someone look weird, as soon as you pull out your pen, like, yeah, let me just check this. There are little ways, innocent ways, where you don't have to affront someone, and you can still protect yourself. We could talk a whole show about all these little social engineering best practices to keep yourself safe, and you don't have to be
security best practices.
And you're the one performing the social engineering on a potential thief. You're the one digging deeper. You're asking the salesman type questions to find out what they're about without, affronting them. You can still be on the receiving end or the innocent side of the equation, but prevent yourself from getting taken. Any stranger who comes up to you and wants to start an impromptu conversation should immediately be held as suspect to you, and probably for a long time. New friends of mine, I'm always suspicious of, even for weeks or months. I mean, that doesn't mean that I don't enjoy their company. That doesn't mean that we don't get along and that we can't tell jokes and enjoy each other, or that I might trust them with some innocuous things. And I'll test trusting these friends with seemingly innocuous things that they might see as more valuable than I do in trusting them with it. And then how they behave with that trust is a huge indicator. So there's all sorts of little social engineering strategies that you as you can use as prevention to for your victimhood.
But yeah, anybody that comes up to you that you don't know and wants to exchange some sort of money with you, currency, bitcoins, whatever it is just a warning sign right off the bat there. That's generally not something you just do with random strangers. And just don't do it, generally. I mean, I can't think of a situation where I do it, and that's why they're offering these, or they come up with these big percentages. It's playing on your greed. And it's like, because they aren't going to get anybody to fall for their scam if they're saying, oh yeah, we'll pay you the same thing as an exchange, because an exchange or whatever that you trust, you're going to go to them anyway. But if they come up and say they have something extraordinary, like they'll pay you 8%, that is playing off your greed and saying, oh, I can make a quick 8% by dealing with this guy, and then you're like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. And it's that heat of the moment, adrenaline buy, kind of like how they place things in the stores and stuff on end caps and in prime locations to get people to just impulse buy. And
yeah,
they're playing off of that. So you don't have time really to process what you're doing, and it's an impulse move you make, and then you fall for the scam, and you don't have time to just really take in what's happening.
So I just want to bring up one thing, and maybe I'm getting a bit too esoteric here, but I'm in Chris's company and some of you other folks, and maybe this is all right, but we have this tool, Bitcoin, now that is putting financial responsibility, security responsibilities back into the hands of the individual. And this is how trust is distributed, and that's good because systemic risk or systemic failure is much less reduced when you distribute trust and distribute risk. And that's good. But why is it not good at the moment, and why does it get a bad name at the moment? Well, that's because we have this long history of comfortability with outsourcing risk and trust to third parties who hide their mistakes from us, and they don't really manage that risk very well, and they don't really manage our trust very well, but we're under this mostly an illusion that they do. So now that Bitcoin's here and we can take this responsibility back, a lot of us are relearning the difficulty in doing that, and the empowerment or the confidence that can be gained from doing that. And that second part comes from the hard work involved in relearning this stuff or practicing it on an ongoing basis. So that hard work is necessary, and people are averse to hard work naturally because work is pain, and pain is less than desirable unless there's a big payoff at the end, you know, a big value payout at the end. So building a company, selling it, you know, off, that's well worth the pain of building the company, usually in those cases. It's not worth it if you're feeling uncomfortable or you're feeling unprepared or under-equipped. And now we do have the equipment, we just need to relearn how to use it. And that's the difficult process. So I want people to think about how delicate of a process it is, and what it means for powers out there, various powers, to maintain a monopoly on the outsourcing of trust to them and their partner entities. What does that look? What do human beings walking down the street look like when they've outsourced their trust, their confidence, and their risk to third parties? They look like children. All of them do, and because that's how it's built. That's how it's made. It's very paternalistic, or you know, materially parental. It really is. And when you become an adult and you are worried about maybe being scammed by a friend that you trust, or worried about the newest person you met, or the newest offer that sounds too good to be true, that's a signal that you need to. That's in every one of us, and we can't ignore it. We need to stop ignoring it, and we need to realize it for what it is. It's a primal signal that something's not okay here, and you need to wait.
And this is the thing I think.
Another thing that's
sorry. Go on, Jamie.
Another thing that scammers use is they'll try to make you feel inferior by just baffling you with bullshit and making something sound overly complicated. So, and just say, well, you don't understand it. That's why you need me to handle it for you. Give me your money, and I will take care of it. Because it's too complicated for you to do it. And that's the way the banks and the Federal Reserve and everybody has done things for 100 years, because they've told people that, you know, money is just too hard for the average person to deal with. You need a banking system.
And I think that, Will, you mentioned it, now that we're in this age where we become the banks and this age of decentralization, isn't it so that now we're realizing that we've been letting our own information out, not taking responsibility for our own privacy. We haven't been, you know, so it's, of course people are going to get scammed. People, it's almost like this new Wild West that's opened up, and people are like, oh my God, I got my own privacy and I got to be my own bank. And, you know, and it has to, people have got to wise up. And it probably would be worth doing a operational security basics show where we talk about, you know, what it means to be your own bank, because it does mean that, you know, you can't go, you've got to be, you know, two-factor authentication as standard or whatever, you know, all the basic parameters of security, which before we might have not even considered. I think that now that puts that power back into our hands, but it also puts the responsibility.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up where you're saying, you know, we have these, we can, it's not about just relearning it, it's about helping each other learn this. Like, I don't want to take care of all of my friends. I want to teach them how to, they can take care of themselves. And, you know, this is how a leader leads. This is how Satoshi seeded the blockchain initially. He was the leader, and he seeded the blockchain to people that he felt he could trust. And then he gave them the keys and walked away, you know? And this is what a leader does. They empower people, and then they trust them to lead themselves, right? Good leaders do that. Bad leaders are looking to be followed, you know, and maintain the monopoly on their concentration of power. It's a wonder that we have monopolies with concentrations of power, such as banks and credit card companies or governments or whatever you want to talk about. It's precisely because people have felt that it's a better proposition to avoid doing the work themselves to secure their own affairs and manage their own affairs, than to give it to these powers, and we wonder how they grow into the behemoths that they grow into. If you don't like these things, then one good example that we see here in the U.S. a lot is the argument between is it the corporations that have all the power, or is it the government that has all the power, and the Senate and House just don't do anything about it? Well, that's not a real question. That's a false paradigm, right? The power is because you're looking for either the government or the corporations to have it. Like, stop doing that. Stop doing that. The tools exist today for us to maintain this, and you won't see these Leviathan-sized monopolies grow up.
Yeah, and let's look at what we've already got within this space that isn't currently being utilized, right? You can protect yourself against people like Vollmer using the Bitcoin Web of Trust, Bitcoin OTC. The problem with these kinds of systems is that the user friendliness is appalling, like the actual design and the layout of it. And then remember that the very thing that scammers will use, in particular professional scammers, will actually use very good looking front ends. They will use great marketing, great outward appearances. So this is the tool that we can actually use, but people aren't using that. And the point was that Daniel didn't even seem to know about it. So I kind of want to transition because we've got a few things to cover today. One of the other things we were going to cover was the revelation that Mintpal has shut down. And this was something we covered back in July. The link is in the description below on the second heading. And this was over Alex Green, who is CEO of Moopay, who announced back then that they had acquired, that Moopay had acquired, or Moolah had acquired Mintpal, the Bitcoin cryptocurrency exchange. It now turns out that they hadn't acquired them, and that now Mintpal has to go down, citing some critical bugs. They have told everyone that their funds are safe. We're getting mixed reports that the people are having difficulty withdrawing any funds. Some people saying it's okay, some people saying that they can't, and they're basically saying that you've got to get your funds out by the 31st of October, and if you don't, you're going to get an email asking you where you want them sent. So this is yet another thing. Now, if you remember, this was the guy. Let's see if I can pull up the article, because it's actually, here it is. So do you remember the guy who had his video leaked in his chat with Dogecoin, Jackson Palmer?
I remember that.
And now that video has been taken down, and I'm so gutted because we definitely should have taken that and put that in the blockchain. But that's now been taken down. And the way he came across to us at the time, he was threatening legal action. And the first thing, okay, one of the best signals that someone isn't being honest with you is that, well, they'll say to be perfectly honest with you a lot, and they'll also get very, very defensive and protective about their own rights and privacy, and they'll start to do a lot of victim blaming. They'll start to put things on you. Once I actually caught someone committing fraud, and I entrapped him, and I had an undercover camera, and I was there with him, and even though I just exposed him as a fraud to a room of people, he started accusing me of being in the wrong, and he was shouting, "I'm going to sue you, I'm going to..." Hang on a minute, like, you've just committed a crime that could land you in prison for quite a while. What exactly have I done wrong here? And this is what they often do to anything to deflect the blame from themselves. And so this video was just like, Theo and I were watching it, and we showed it a little bit of it on air, and it was just like, there's some vibe coming across here that doesn't really feel right. I mean, I'm opining, obviously, but now a lot of people are saying on Twitter, let me pull up the window here, a lot of people just saying, like, this wasn't obvious. Do you know what I mean? We kind of knew this was going to happen, and so they're saying that they're basically bankrupt, that people have got to get their money out. Brock Pierce has reached out and has told them to contact him. We don't have any more news on that at the moment, and this is the original. So what was the terminology that they use? An acquisition, that's right. Yeah. So they said they were going to enter talks.
Well, now they say they were just managers.
Yes. They just said that it was just a management sharing, that we just had people that were going to work there. And as a result of this acquisition, and this chap on Reddit, IkmoIkmo, said that the term acquisition is not, it's an absolute term. You can't have, it's not like a little bit of an acquisition. It's either an acquisition or it isn't. And now that it's turned out that the business model wasn't as profitable as they would have liked it to have been, in spite of the fact that Alex Green said initially that they were doing a roaring trade, and now he's saying, oh, it's really quiet, we can't afford to keep up operations because they've reached negative cash flow. Well, I thought it was perfectly normal for a startup to have negative cash flow. Normally startups take at least a few years before they get any kind of traction whatsoever. And so, yeah, I mean, this is where we're left. And I just want to say about, BitNation, because we were there last night. One of the things that came across from Suzanne was just how sincere that she was when she was presenting it. Like, from the outside, we kind of looked at BitNation. We looked at the fact that there seemed to be 3 people at BitNation that were Ethereum. Last night, Suzanne said there was only 1, but I counted 3 because Charles Hoskinson was helping out. There was a picture on the internet of her and Suzanne and Charles looking, like they were getting on like an absolute house on fire with a bottle of champagne. And, he did that talk at TED in Bermuda. There was also Richard, who I spoke to as head of communications, and I thought there was one other developer as well. So I thought there were 3 people. Now, I think of Ethereum, and I think, okay, it looks good, but guys, you haven't delivered anything yet. And I've been following them, hanging out with Vitalik and Stefan, and I'm more than happy to go cover their hackathons, but the code is very, very raw. They've already raised, $18 million, and they still haven't delivered anything. So when I saw the connection with BitNation, I instantly started to get skeptical. Then when I noticed there was no white paper at the time, I noticed that there was an awful lot of marketing and a lot of hype going around it, but they were asking for money without having any code, any white paper, and all they've really got are ideas. Now, the ideas...
But that's because what they were trying to do, Chris, I reckon, was to raise that cash, and they didn't have no code, because I was saying to Jamie exactly the same thing, and I watched you guys. It was a great, and I understand exactly what you mean, a sincere attitude, and that kind of thing. But I was also like, hey, she's a contractor that was involved in Libya. She was out in Afghanistan. She was kicked.
Yeah.
There's some stuff where she was a general, British Army general, had been caught having an affair with her. And the more I looked into her doings, I thought this is great idea, great philosophy, but there's no product. And me and Jamie was having a conversation yesterday that we joked that the Bitcoin bust. That there's so much companies asking for money, asking for investment, and a lot of them haven't got a product, they haven't got set the infrastructure up. There's going to be a lot of people, I reckon up to 30% of the businesses that are asking for money and asking for investment are going to just fall to the wayside. So, and I was actually kind of a bit disappointed in the fact that, governance too, great strapline, great, but do you really want a CEO running a country? I don't.
Right. But it wasn't, for me, it wasn't so much about the ideas. So this is Suzanne, who I just want to say I can vouch for. I mean, I met her, I was very taken with her level of enthusiasm and her sincerity and her belief in herself and her vision. And I absolutely don't want to take anything away from that. But the reason, what today's show is all about how to recognize fraud. That there's a reason why on the outside BitNation looks like fraud. There's a reason why. It's because it exhibits a lot, externally it exhibits a lot of the same features that we're used to seeing in this industry, namely a homepage. Like these homepages, all bootstrap homepages, they all look the damn same, and they just look really, really generic. And it's like, great, you can make a good homepage, but where's the product? And one of the other things, do you remember when countdown timers were a thing? Like, do you remember all those other ones? Like, and it's all designed as psychological manipulation. In psychology, look up reactance, okay? Reactance is the area of psychology that deals with manipulations on decision-making, ways of making you do things, converting you in the sales funnel, making you make that purchase on an impulse buy. And it's all about tricking you into making short-term decisions that go against your long-term interests because it suits the long-term interests of the seller. And so this set me right off. Like, as soon as I saw, like, oh, they're asking for 2 million, and they've done the circuit, they've been on the Kaiser report, tick, they've done the TED talk, tick, they've gone through all that, but hang on. Like,
great marketing, but yeah, where's the code? Where's the GitHub?
Yeah, I'm not You know,
Maybe you're right. Maybe this is where it needs a reboot. Maybe her idea and the whole idea of using blockchain technology for governments, contracts, that sort of thing. Maybe it's one of those things that's like, come on, guys, you know, great idea, great business. She's had a crack. All right, there's a lot of things that ain't working, but I think, you know, there's a big difference between her and her BitNation compared to obviously that Dr. Warner or whatever his name is.
Vollmer, yeah. I mean, look, I want to say that I want to give a big shout out to Juicy G, my man on Twitter, who has been defending her vehemently. And I'm totally behind what you're saying. You're preaching to the choir a lot, you know, when you talk through this stuff, because I'm totally on your side. If you're watching this, Juicy, because I get it, but my problem wasn't that the idea itself wasn't great. My problem was that this was a white paper. Like, seriously, it's not a white paper. It's a bit of marketing literature. It's got nothing technical in it. It reads as though the author doesn't even really understand what a blockchain is. I mean, they kind of get it, but they describe it as a ledger rather than as a distributed database with a state transition rule. A distributed timestamp server is actually the original title of it. It can't do everything that governments do because it can't act in the physical realm. It can't actually exert any force, which is one of the major things that governments do. And people did at the time come out with questions about military, because she used the word vigilante. She said that there should be vigilantes. That was her exact use of the word. I think that's a poor word to use. I know what she means, but that's not the right word. Jamie actually said, no, what she's talking about is neighborhood watch. She's talking about community policing. Absolutely. That's exactly what we've been doing on the blockchain in catching all these frauds and stuff. But she...
Right. I thought she just was had a very wrong wording of it all. And I know Will and I have talked about this before, about the philosophy of anarchy and things. And there's a general understanding of how a lot of these things would work, and a lot of that talk that she had yesterday was, well, what will happen if this happens and that, and it was like she was there trying to convince these people of joining Anarchy Club, and I was like, okay, so you're going to convince this group of people to join Anarchy Club, but you don't have any set plans. You're not going to actually make anything except for some shit coin or something, and maybe make some contracts. You got a lawyer.
Well, actually, it was worse.
I don't see you actually producing anything of value that we can invest in. You know, if we're putting our money into something, we want something that, what is the value in Anarchy Club? I mean, if
it's
I'm
actually
giving
worse
some
than the
money to
shitcoin,
something, I want to see that money being transferred into something on the ground, or actually seeing code that I can run on my computer. And you know, there's got to be that bridge.
Yeah, here's the big problem for me, and I've been watching this since I think it was first even murmured about two and a half months ago. I've been in their Skype chat room for that whole time, and you know, these large Skype chat rooms, they're not too active to follow everything that's said if you're, you know, you work in front of a computer much of the day. So I've seen the evolution of the development of this idea, and I had problems with it from day one. There's a great Let's Talk Bitcoin episode where Stephanie Murphy articulates a lot of her issues with the project. I share those concerns with Stephanie. The other thing is, you know, Suzanne talks about voluntarily opting into some of these competitive services that she'd like BitNation to one day provide. It sounds like that's an a la carte basis for you know, self-selecting governance services. That's a good idea. So why do we need one blockchain, or much less one company, to administer or develop all of those services? I don't think we do. I think Suzanne would probably agree that competition is good, and if there were BitNation competitors, or even just, you know, BitNation's doing all these different services, and then they have competitors who just focus on one particular service, and and so on. I think she'd agree that that's a good thing, but I don't think that makes her as visionary as some are making her out to be. And I think a lot of the defense that she's been receiving from folks on Twitter and other places is unwarranted. She has made a mistake in bringing an idea to market as a product, and it's a mistake because unless your name is Tony Robbins or something like that, if you're in the self-help business, you can't have a productless company, and content in those companies is the product. But where's her content? I mean, it took until like 12 hours before they were going to launch the crowd sale for the white paper to be published.
And I think this is what it's about. Those ideas were too underdeveloped. I mean, it's a great idea. I don't want to shoot it down. I don't want to shoot anyone down that wants to change governments and make the world better and more decentralization, more power to people. But isn't this the thing, that it was a great business idea but wasn't ready? I only wish that all us guys would have been involved probably a little bit more. We would have said, hey, don't release it. Where's the GitHub? Get this rocking and rolling.
Yeah, but we already have a lot of these tools. We are.
Oh, here we go, Theo. Maybe that's it.
Right. It's less. Yeah, what I say is less talk, more rock. Yeah. Less talk, more rock. We have tools. We've got Armory. We got Copay. We got BitHalo. We got all this stuff, and we just have to use it more. And then we will do a lot of the things that are talked about in the whole BitNation thing, which a lot of the ideas are excellent. You see what I mean? And I think we all agree with that. It's just that we can do all that stuff without having an IPO with tokens you have to buy. You see what I mean? We don't need to, commoditize everything into, this like IPO and with a countdown and all that. I mean, some things need that, but not everything. And we already have a lot of this stuff, that's going on. And the best way to show, and what is it, the cart before the wheel, or the wheel before the cart, or the horse
before the horse?
Horse before whatever the hell. Well, this is a total. this is the yeah. But that's how mixed up it is. Just how I said it, and that's what we need to get in order.
Yeah, I just imagine.
You hit the nail on the head. The cart before the horse thing is exactly it. Crowd sale with no product. This should not be tolerated. This is, and the only reason it's tolerated in this case is because she's selling a dream. She's selling Tony Robbins. Satoshi didn't do.
We gotta tell people who Tony Robbins is. We can maybe put.
Who is Tony Robbins?
Tony
I know
Robbins
who he is, but
is very, very tall, bass-sounding man who is a self-help guru, and he has a lot of quality things to share with people. There's a lot of what he talks about in his self-help messaging that I agree with, and a lot of it that I don't. But the point is, he's a multi-millionaire because he's a public speaker, and he empowers people and motivates them, and that's really all it is. He just fires up their juice, and he's good at it. So how is Suzanne or BitNation as an idea similar to that? Well, when you say BitNation Governance 2.0, it's a vast majority of the millions of people who have fallen in love or in lust with Bitcoin. And once you've captured that imagination and you can keep juicing it here and there and tweaking it, and you show up on the Kaiser Report, and you show up on TEDx, and you show up throughout the most popular Bitcoin media outlets out there, you're going to keep juicing and spreading that market reach, if you will. So
there's going to be no orgasm with it.
Here's why that's
right.
I want to
ending.
Here's why that's dangerous, okay? Because this is an idea that puts a massive target on the backs of anyone who wants to be a customer, let alone build it, okay? And not just from like one major superpower, but several superpowers will have you'll have a target on you. This is irresponsible. Satoshi led by example, right? And I don't want to go back to this, but we can just look years later. We don't even have to read anything he wrote except the white paper. All we have to do is see what the invention of the Bitcoin and blockchains have done, and we can see that he did this. And that is, he developed in secret. He invested his own time and possibly money to feed himself and things while he was building this project, and he perfected it to the point that he could in his own capacity. And then, when he felt it was ready to be received by a small amount of people who might grasp it, only at that point did he release a prototype. And the prototype was tangible, essentially. It was software, but it's, you know, tangible software, right? You can download it off of Git and run it.
Better than that, he wrote the software, then he wrote the white paper.
Exactly. So he delivered. He delivered, and it was secret. He mentioned a few forum posts, if you go and look through the archives, like, I'm developing a peer-to-peer cash system that blah, blah, blah will be like Chaumian Cash, but it'll also do this. And, like, people were like, oh, interesting, next topic, you know? And, like, good. So he did seed the public, so to speak, or his target market with some expectation. That's all right, but you don't sell something that you, like what BitNation has done has just been, it's ruining the idea itself. It's making the idea itself look bad. Much like, for example, some of you may be familiar with the Gulch Chili fiasco in recent months. A group of anarcho-capitalists bought some land in Chile and sold it in parcels to people who might want to expatriate themselves to a more friendly jurisdiction there. And what happened was they hired some guy to parcel out and deal with the real estate side, who embezzled all the funds and screwed everybody. So all the investors got screwed, all the customers got screwed, and one guy, you know, he probably won't work again within those circles of people, but he embezzled funds and blew it all. It made the whole project look bad. You got Salon and all these tabloids writing hit pieces about libertarianism because of it, and so be it. But the point is, the idea wasn't bad, and it wasn't the idea's fault that it failed. It was human error. And Satoshi avoided a lot of that human error in three ways. One, by remaining anonymous as long as he can, and two, by building something and publishing it before selling it, if you will. And I forgot what the third one was, but it doesn't matter. The point is,
sorry, Will. I think you really nailed it on the head there. A lot of really good points. And what I just want to kind of frame in there as well is that you got to remember Suzanne, or whatever her name is. She's not a programmer or coder like any of you guys. She's a media marketing person. So I can understand that it's a reverse process for her. I'll build up the hype. I'll get the TED interviews. I'll do this, that, and the other. But there's no product. I mean, jumping back to that Dr. Warner guy, you know, what was that guy trying to do? Was he? Because I saw it. I thought OTC trader, yeah, right, millions of pound doctor, whatever. You know, it's not real. Has the guy kind of fiddled someone, or was it that he just got on Coinbase and got recognised as like a kind of official OTCer?
He was just on Twitter. He was on Twitter, and he was just, you know, spamming Twitter basically nonstop every day. I will buy blocks of 10 bitcoins for 8%, and I will wire you the money today. You know, UK, Euro, US, doesn't matter. And then he had his other accounts confirming that. Say, oh, thanks a lot. I just got your wire transfer. Thanks a lot. That was basically the gist of his scam.
And going back to, obviously,
do we know anybody that actually fell for it?
Go for it, Jamie.
Did anybody actually say that they fell for it, or
Coinbase nearly,
or confirm that they lost money through it?
I don't know. All I saw is that the guy was trying to build social marketing up to make himself look like an OTC trader, professional one, and you know.
The only reason he might have gotten anybody is because it was published in Coindesk. David, can you comment on that?
Well, I was just going to say, Chris was saying earlier on that he met someone who had lost money through Vollmer. He met someone at the BTC meetup.
What do you think, David, about the fact that one of the main reasons this guy had any credibility and then the possibility of defrauding people was because he was referenced in the most reputable or most widely circulated Bitcoin publication.
It certainly helped him. It opened him up to a whole new audience, and it was an error on Coindesk's part, which they tacitly recognised by saying that they've removed the references to him. As I stated before, I mean, I'm by no means perfect. I have made mistakes before, but ideally, what you would do is try and reach out to customers and at least say, in the story, I reached out to customers, but no one got back to me by the time of publication, and then people can look at that and say, well, okay, there's only so much verification to this story.
I just wanted to jump in here because Juicy has been contacting me through DM, and he's saying, what about Mastercoin? What about Counterparty? These were dreams too, and people back them. Why not highlight them? He's saying there are plenty of success stories. Mastercoin, Counterparty both had white papers. They raised funds. They built products. And, you know, do these not count?
Those companies were also led by executives who were technical. They were coders, and they had a history of success and exit and things like that. And they had a history of producing. So, and they were able to develop proofs of concept before their sales too.
They also had actual white papers, not abstracts from yellow papers that were not white papers.
Right, yellow papers, white papers. I don't know all this color schemes and stuff.
So I don't think that they were ever claiming to have white papers or anything, and I think that's part of the thing. It's just a reorganization. That is actually an interesting idea. It's just an organization of tools that already exist, is what I understood. And you know what I mean? They're using Counterparty, and they want to develop and use the things that already exist and not necessarily make a whole lot of new stuff. But yeah, I was scared totally by the whole IPO presentation of the whole thing. So I would never.
If they wanted to do a notary registry ledger, something like that, then they should have come up with the name like Notary.io and released an actual product that did something that people found useful, that outcompeted its competitors, such as proofofexistence.com and such and such. And once they did that, they could then rebrand and say, check out our new scope. We're BitNation. Not only you saw what we did with Notary, well, boom, welfare, boom, passports, marriage, blah, 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 blah,
and
blah.
Actually, that was a point that was brought up last night.
I totally agree. That's exactly it. I think that without even having these, like, you know, mega IPO platforms or whatever you want to call them, let's just do really simple stuff and get that going. You know, like doing, you know, trustless escrow, or I don't know, whatever, or getting married on the blockchain, and use these blockchain things in a simple way and get that going so we know it really well. And then you can do really complicated
Start working on these little apps.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. Start working on little apps, and then we'll put together these apps so we have something big.
Like, well, let's just say what she got right first of all. What she got right was the activism, the enthusiasm, more of that definitely. She's also very worldly. Like, she is way ahead of everyone else because she exists in no country. She sort of lives in Brazil, she said, right? So she's been in Afghanistan, she's been in Libya, she feels like a citizen of this whole planet, and that should be celebrated. And one of the things that people brought up last night is that, you know, it was like you're trying to reinvent the wheel here. We've already got distributed systems. Why not integrate with what's already out there? And to her credit, she was very humble. I would have totally been, like, you know, against her if she had been arrogant, but she wasn't arrogant. She was like, that's a good question. I don't know. She admitted it as quickly as possible, and she was just very humble and just very sincere. So you know, hopefully she can reboot this project and make something of it. Now, something that Juicy G also noticed was that the webpage mentions a 10% seed funding round. And no, it's true, none of us covered that, but then again, neither did they. So maybe the case, in fact, is that actually they're only asking for 10% of the initial fundraiser. There was also some real doubts about how those funds were going to be managed. Like, was it going to be in a multi-sig? Because in the resignation letters from the people from BitNation, they were saying that there was no multi-sig fund. Now, she came back and addressed it on her own terms. She brought it up first. She said that these people were not core developers, part of BitNation. They were just, you know, people that were involved, loosely involved, and they've walked away citing, you know, personal differences. And in fact, there was a multi-sig wallet. But then when I said, well, who controls that wallet? Just like Ethereum, she didn't really want to say. And I was like, well, listen, on what conditions do these funds get released? Because she's saying, well, we don't take the money until we deliver on the products. And it's like, yeah, but who has the private keys? And actually, Juicy G, dude, if you're watching, I would have thought you, of all people, would have had concerns about that, because that's exactly what came up over Ethereum, was that they were raising all this capital but weren't delivering anything. Now, in addition to that, obviously, Ethereum are spending their money rampantly. They've got 4 offices around the world. They've got Zurich, Toronto, London, Berlin. They're hiring all these people, making job offers. I've already heard, again, last night somebody told me that she'd been offered a job, and it's like, who offered you a job and on what basis? And like, you know, how have they got this money? They haven't delivered anything really tangible. That's why I'm going to their hackathons and actually documenting this stuff. Because just because it sounds clever or looks good on the outside doesn't mean it can't be something called the long con. The long con, of course, is the term used for the really sophisticated con artist who gets you attached over a long period of time. I also want a big shout out to this article. It's a famous article by Derek Sivers, who said ideas are just a multiplier of execution. And it's a fantastic article where it says, yeah, ideas are great, but actually all they do is multiply the effort and the work that you put in to delivering them. So deliver first, even if it's really, really small. Like on this, I don't want to like big ourselves up too much on this channel, but like I will anyway, fuck it, it's not bragging if it's the truth, right? But we already delivered. That was the first thing we did, and even though it was a bit shitty and like lots of gaffes and mistakes on air or whatever, we were all having good fun. It was just good, honest fun. And we, Tom, to his credit, all started off, he's been working his arse off for over a year now, making videos, very little in return. And it was just creating goodwill between people. And even though it was very, very small, people could see the measure of our sacrifice. They could see that we were going out of our way, living uncomfortably. That's proper lean. Proper lean isn't propping up your hipster lifestyle and expecting the world just to give you the money just because you like that nice loft apartment in Shoreditch, right? That's not the point of this. And people that aren't willing to lower their living standards, who aren't willing to be humble, actually, and say, maybe I'm not worth as much as I thought I was, you know, 4 or 5 years ago. I'm willing to lower my living standards rather than force the buyers into paying more for their product. So, yeah, big shout out to that article. We were supposed to talk about Moolah. We didn't really get to cover Moolah. So any other points from the panel?
Yeah, I just want to point out, someone was saying in the chat that she admitted to being lazy at the meetup last night. I saw parts of the video that you did, Chris, last night, and that's not an admission that's a good pitch for you or the company you represent at all. I mean, unless you're like leisurestudies.net or something like that. But the reason I bring that up is we're talking about, you showed that graphic and how work, real hard work, follow through, multiplies an idea. Ideas are nothing unless you put intention and action behind them, right? And what I'm seeing is delegation. A real leader, let's say you're a bar manager, and the bar is busy, and someone pukes in the bathroom. A real leader sees his busy staff and wants the place to run smoothly and jumps into that bathroom and cleans that puke up. They don't delegate it and then, you know, let the bar process, the service process, get bogged down being temporarily understaffed.
And when I see an investor asking me for money, I want to see a watertight business plan. I want to see code on a website. I want to see a development team that are all united. I want to see the pudding. The proof is in the pudding. And this is why we're having this conversation, because not many people were. We was all thinking, what's the score with BitNation? It looks, it's got beautiful wrapping. We unwrap it, and there's nothing in the box, baby. And Suzanne's, but she seems like a great worldly lady, travelled the world, great PR, successful. I hope if I ever have a daughter that's 28 years old, I hope she's doing as good as she is. You know what I mean? I'll pat her on the back. But this is what we want to see. If you're going to ask for money, we want to see a watertight business plan. We want to see a development team. We want to see a product that's being developed.
Yeah, you've got to look at any crowd sales situation like you would if you were investing a large sum of venture capital that was your own ass on the line. So you can get away with these crowd sales without the watertight business plan and the P&L reports and all the projections and all the things that a venture capitalist will ask you to open your books, as a company and show them. And you can get away with not providing that stuff during a crowd sale because you're selling a dream to someone who's busy working behind their computer, and it's with Bitcoin it's real easy to send money, so if you want to see something succeed and sit back and watch it grow, that seems like a compelling proposition, and the time required to investigate the P&L, the projections, the revenue projections, what's the team like. I mean, we didn't know who the team was until like 2 weeks ago.
And then the team sack off and say they don't want nothing to do with it. And then they're asking for money. So yeah, it's not watertight. Go on, Jamie.
Look at what we've been doing with the World Crypto Network here. We've all been doing this on our own time, trying to raise our own funds individually, working together in voluntary cooperation with each other. This is pretty much an anarchist network. We're all doing this in cooperation. We didn't try to do some great big crowd sale to raise $2 million, $10 million ahead of time to say we're going to do this worldwide network to bring people broadcasts about cryptocurrencies and have experts on and cover protests and do all this stuff. This is something we just started to fucking do it, and we're hoping that it's going to pay off.
Yeah, we just did it, and we've still got that multi-sig, although we're pretty useless with the multi-sig because we still haven't got around to doing a signature.
Forget this. Okay. I'm doing a crowd sale right now. So all you got to do is donate to my Bitcoin address that we've got in the description.
Oh yeah.
And give me either and then just somehow proof that you donated to me, and give me your Doge party or your counterparty address, and you'll get some Theo token.
Right.
And I don't have a white paper, and I don't have a business plan, and I don't have any code, and I don't have any website, and I don't have anything, but I've got tokens, and you can get them.
And it's a great fucking idea.
That's a great idea.
That's exactly. It's totally empty. This is it.
But it's got big aspiration.
Yeah,
and we've got a ticker, and the time is counting down. So hurry up now.
You gotta buy now. Buy.
Yeah, get it now. It's got.
I'm 45 years old.
I've already contacted.
One at a time.
Yeah, exactly.
Securities fraud nation.
I've contacted all the exchanges. They're behind it. It's gonna be huge. Get on board now.
Right, I want to go to Blake because I want to know, this is your comment a year ago on Suzanne's TEDx talk, and you're saying that back then you were saying like you thought she was absolutely brilliant, she speaks multiple languages, she's polymathic and all the rest. Is your view the same now as it was back then? Do you have any comments?
Well, she's not doing the same thing now as she was then. I mean, that's the biggest thing that happens to people that are intelligent. They start working outside of their wheelhouse and scope of knowledge and stop talking about philosophy and then start going into computer science and information science, writing a yellow paper, calling it a white paper, having nothing but abstracts, maybe having coders that can do individual pieces of what they need to get done, but not having a macro understanding of how to turn ideas into software that's going to return on investment, and or just donating money to something that is not a crowd sale or a sale of any kind. I mean, we use things like sale, where there's certain terms that when you use them, it makes people believe that something is going to happen that, in this case, they don't have a tenable business plan yet. And to collect money without a tenable business plan, without a trust account, without multi-sig is, relatively irresponsible. It bothers me. And just because we're friends doesn't mean that I'm going to coddle her. I mean, men and women are just as good as one another. I don't want to go into the soft bigotry of low expectations. She's a friend of mine, but at the same time, I think that the way this was handled was very irresponsible.
Yeah, yeah, I'm starting to see the same thing emerge, and
Yeah, and Chris, I feel the same, and it's almost like it's more painful. So I'm more, I just imagine Dragon's Den sitting around and going, so Suzanne, great idea. So where's the product? And just being fucking laughed out the room. There's no way you can ask for money. And I think, Blake, you mentioned it right. The girl's a marketing advertising girl, and she's talking about computer science. It's a big no-no. I'm a musician and artist. I don't write code. A lot of my friends write code, but I don't fucking pretend to, and the dangerous thing of doing is just go running out there with a great idea. And the problem is like you said, Theo, there's a couple of ideas that are quite similar, and just trying to rehash something, rewrap something isn't going to cut the mustard, especially when you're asking for £250,000 And maybe our business partners or business colleagues might say, hey, one way to go about this is to ask for the money first and then develop the product. But you can't do that in an investment world, because the investors would be turning around and saying, well, now we're going to sue your ass off because you haven't delivered on the promise.
Discount yourself. You can program step drum computer.
And speaking of not keeping your promises, this is the current Mintpal website, mintpal.com. It's currently down for a number of necessary changes and fixes. A separate method of withdrawing funds will be made available on October the 16th, 2014. That's tomorrow. And this is the Twitter feed. The tweets are coming in thick and fast. 56 new tweets since we talked about this a little while ago. And yeah, looks like they're not doing too well. Take a look at Mintpal.
Jamie, do you want to talk about Mintpal? Because you had a stake in there, bro, and you probably know a little bit better than...
Well, Mintpal, they first started having problems with the whole Vericoin incident and Vericoin rolling back their blockchain, and there was a lot of controversy over that, and I don't want to get into that, but that cost Mintpal a large portion of their business. And after that, then that's when there was the announcement that, well, during that whole thing, I believe Vericoin and Moolah were working on a joint venture to convert fiat into Vericoin, and Moolah also announced at that time that they were going to buy Mintpal, which seemed like a good business move at the time. And what ended up happening now is Mintpal was just running along on its own, and it seemed to be recovering some, and then they were making these promises of a makeover for their big version 2 relaunch. And if we've learned anything from Microsoft over the years, even numbers are horrible for anything to do with computers. That this relaunch turned out to be just a complete tank, and they botched it. So now it sounds like, well, no, it wasn't even Moolah that was doing the actual business with them. It was some other deal. And so all this just turned into this convoluted mess that I haven't really been keeping up with completely, because I don't personally have a stake there anymore, and I'm glad I don't.
Yeah, that's a point well made. So let me just say thank you to David Gilson. Cheers for coming along. I understand you have to go. I'm just going to get your Bitcoin address up. So in the description below, you can find all of our Bitcoin addresses. We do make these things on a voluntary basis because that's what we're into around here. Let me just pull this up for you one sec. And so, yeah, we don't make any money out of these. For most of us, or no, maybe for half of us, I guess, this is our only job. Am I right? Would I be right in saying that? It is for me anyway. And this is David Gilson's address, so please, could you send some coins his way? I will be doing so in just a little bit after the show ends. And thank you very much, David, for your valuable insight.
You're very welcome, Chris, and it's good to be on WCN again, and I hope to be soon.
Yeah, lovely, man. Take it easy.
Great to have you, David.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, YouTube. Bye, YouTube.
So these long meandering shows just seem to collect more larger audiences as they go on, and
keep it rolling.
And the thing is, I want to say something else as well, which is that a lot of people are sending me anonymous messages about bullying in the Bitcoin space as well, and I'm kind of looking into it at the moment because they're just allegations, and I've got to cross-check it, and I'm quite OCD about these kind of things. And a lot of what you find in these dodgy business practices, and particularly like with Mark Carpella's at MT Gox, was you get this culture of fear. This show is all about how to recognize fraud when you see it. What we're saying is that Suzanne is not a fraud. It's just that she's executing badly, and that she needs to perhaps reboot BitNation and try again. And yet there are definitely frauds out there. And what I would say the distinction is this culture of fear that frauds instill. Fraud knows that they're telling a lie. That you have to know what the truth is in order to tell a lie. Otherwise, you're not lying, you're just being ignorant. And one of the things I noticed about Suzanne was that when she didn't know, she just said, I don't know. She didn't bullshit, she didn't use weasel words, she didn't try and cleverly work her way around it. She just said, that's a good question, I don't know. And one of the things that you saw at MT Gox was apparently there was this culture of fear where every time someone tried asking him a hard question, he'd shout and he'd get aggressive. And that's designed to make you go back, oh, okay, it just won't go there. It's just easier if I don't bring that up. You absolutely should bring that up. In fact, when someone shouts at you, that's when you know to keep pushing. And one of the things that we found is that, like James Bang is doing, just point a camera at them and they go, and it's like bright light on them, like perish. What are the vampires in daylight? And they just turn to dust. And it makes them so weak. As long as you're live and as long as they don't feel like they've got any opportunity to seize that camera off of you, because they don't want accountability, right? It's the witnessing that makes present occur, right? Things are present because they are witnessed by an intelligent observer that's able to delineate and separate and understand units of difference and be able to imply meaning between the gap in the differences. So that's what you're looking out for when you're in a company. What questions am I not allowed to ask? Who am I not allowed to criticize? And when I do, what kind of response do I get? Because no one should shy away from hard questions. A good, honest person to a hard question will say, that's interesting, let's find out. I don't know, but let's go look into that. Thanks for bringing that up. And that's my advice.
And my thoughts on the kind of security thing for anyone out there is gut feeling. Never invest on something you don't know about. Always find out the people involved in it, involved the project, get to know them, get to speak to them. If you want to invest money in something, phone the CEO up, talk to him about his business, find out what he's thinking. What kind of a character is this? Another thing, that going back to that gut feeling, I think that's absolutely important. It's like when the internet first come out and everyone would make the joke, oh, you think you're talking to a beautiful woman, but really she's a fat trucker. You know what I mean? It's you got to have a kind of savviness where you don't just get hook, line, and sinkered into it. Does it sound too good to be true? Dr. Vollmer at London, calling from London Bridge, the Queen himself, whatever. But just that gut feeling, guys. Secure your personal email, secure your personal account, be savvy, don't go clicking around anything. Those porn sites you're looking at, you're always getting gremlins on your computer from those. Don't even look at them, you know what I mean? So that kind of savviness, don't go barebacking it on the internet, you know what I mean? So my kind of thoughts to people would be just kind of be savvy. You walk down the street, you don't keep your mobile phone out if you're walking down the worst part of town and whatever. And I think, as Chris rightly says, there's a big difference between purposeful fraud and Susanna's situation. I think what it was, and I think the panel here quite rightly agree, it was an unplanned execution that wasn't delivered, didn't deliver, wasn't delivered, and there was no final product. So I think there's a big difference between that than the Dr. Warner case of someone purposely out there trying to defraud people. And because the industry is young, because the Bitcoin ecosystem is very young in terms of other systems out there, of course you're going to get this. This is like all the sharks are heading towards these badland waters, you know. So I hope that everyone out there listening, watching, whatnot, thinks about their own security. I don't believe in paranoia. You know, not everyone's out to get you. You don't have to test every friend you meet, because in your gut feeling when you meet someone that's really cool and that good feeling that you get, you know, trust your instincts. But more expertly, trust your own operational security. And I think there was a great video that was shared by Will earlier that I will be looking at, because I think that all of us, if we're going to take responsibility for our own banking in this modern, you know, 21st century, you've got to be a bit more savvy and not just get rinsed out, because there is a lot of sharks out there. But it doesn't mean that the waters are full of sharks. They're only a small fraction, and they're relying on people, you know, that to just get drawn in. So just be clever, think about what you're going to do. If you're going to invest, speak to the organization, speak to the company. You know, you don't put a bet on something that you don't know about, so why would you go betting on something that seems nice on the outside, you know? And I think that's what we're talking about here. It's that kind of own savviness. Some of it can't be taught. It's just some people have had bad experiences where they've been rinsed, but it's just keeping an open mind, you know, looking for the signs. People, one thing going back to, you know, Suzanne thinks, if I don't see someone watertight on their plan, you know, I work in business, you know, if I approach a company or a charity or something and I want to work with them, they ain't going to speak to me if I'm not watertight, because I expect a CEO. We looked at that video earlier. What was the guy's name? You remember that video, Chris, of what that guy that was recorded? We all wanted the video, but we didn't have it. Alex Green. You know, if I spoke to that guy and I thought, hang on a minute, you run this company, you got to be having a fucking joke, you know, because that's not good enough. I expect someone that's going to be looking after my money or looking after a fantastic business.
But I just want to take you back to the quote you started with, which is, "Don't go bareback on the internet." That's a great quote. And also another thing you said I really liked as well is the way these scammers undermine our own sense of vulnerability with our friends, because making yourself vulnerable to someone else is a very important thing to do in life. We've seen it with companies like Snapchat that introduced this kind of ephemeral picture taking feature where the picture would only be up for 3 seconds on the other person's phone, and it encouraged sexting between young people. And the concern was that young people would do it. Well, of course young people want to take risks. They want to be dangerous. They want to take a risk on another person. That's how you build trust in the first place. You can't be betrayed by someone you didn't trust. And so you don't even get the fruits of it. And I think for me, the internet anyway, philosophically speaking, is a big lesson in trust. It's about how information detaches itself from geography. And that is something that we're still going through the process of learning about. But I think that what drives these frauds is this lack of confidence in themselves, and they lack belief in themselves, and so they have to kind of wrap it up in this kind of fake marketing wrapper. Jamie, do you have any final thoughts?
Well, I don't know what goes through their head, because I don't think like that, and I can only speculate, but that's what I do. I speculate. And, you know, I kind of think the opposite of Shem. The gut feeling thing, that's what they play on. And with the impulse buys and things like that. That's what they're playing on. If you look at things like, if you've ever looked into hypnosis or neuro-linguistic programming, things like that, mannerisms, like Chris is sitting there like this now. People will try to mimic your mannerisms, words you use, things like that. Those are trust-building elements in building rapport with people. And people are really good at that, and you can take classes on how to do this, and people like car salesmen and stuff like that are really good at doing this because that's their job. And they'll repeat the same phrases back to you that you say to them, and they will, you know, use the same type of lingo that you use, and they'll pick that up real quickly to basically, so you subconsciously accept them as one of your own, and you feel comfortable around this person, and it's just a way of it's a faster way of building trust with someone, and they use that manipulatively to get into your inner circle, and then if they can manipulate you into making an impulse buy, that's where they got you, and that's how a really good scammer works.
Yeah, it's very, very complex, and intentions are complex, and some scams often don't start off as scams, but then they later on become scams, and you're no longer revealed until later on, even though the person's intentions were different at the outset. I think this show could have better been titled "Trust but Verify." It's a famous sort of saying in Russia, I believe. So we should definitely be dedicating more time to this. I'm actually thinking of starting up a format, although I've said this before about developer watch, and then that never happened. So mea culpa.
Don't tell us.
don't any promises. I'm not asking for any money. But if you would like to, because we've only got so many hours in the day here on this channel, you can volunteer. This is a voluntary anarchist network, so anyone can get involved. It's at World CryptoNet on Twitter. I'm at Mr. Chris Ellis on Twitter. You can reach out to us, and if you want to do a show where we can highlight the scam of the week and actually teach people and get people to call in with their advice on how to avoid this kind of thing, and all the latest techniques that they're using, like they have been recently with the Coindesk article. So yeah, all that's left for me to say now is thank you to my guests, and Jamie and Shem, and thanks a lot, dude, for coming on here. It's your debut, I guess.
Thank you.
And, yeah, thanks to David and Theo and Ksenia and anyone else that I may have forgotten about. Most importantly, you, of course. You make this all worthwhile. Thanks a lot, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.